Whoa. This is way off. Still not good enough. Okay, half my head's missing. There we go. Okay. Jumbi. Cheer up. Get right. Back to Jumbi. Okay, today we're going to be going over, as you saw in the title, blocks, defense. A lot of times blocks are overlooked. We want to learn the next new punch, the next new kick. But when you go back and look at it, I know the saying is the best defense is a strong offense, but in martial arts, we look at it differently. Every one of the forms that we have start with a block. You know, most of them low block punch, high block, they all begin with a block. A lot of people have the tendency of overlooking as blocks as just that. But blocks can lead into way more than just blocking the technique. Once you learn how to utilize your blocks, you can use them for virtually whatever you want, leading into takedowns, joint locks, submissions, what have you. But blocks are very, very, very important. Now, that being said, they can also be used as strikes in conjunction with blocking the technique. Well, in conjunction or as a strike all on its own. Blocks are very, very, very important. So that's what we're going to be covering today, is just a few of our more basic blocks. After all, it's technique that is key to all these blocks. Making sure your hips are moving in conjunction with your arms and your legs, and your breathing, and just making sure that everything is cohesive. That's one of the reasons why we spend so much time on our forms, is to focus and refine that cleaner technique. So first block that we're going to start with today comes from, of course, our very first form, and that is a low block. Let's talk about the low block, shall we? Low block can be used for many things. A lot of people, you know, very first question asked, what are you using it for? And everybody always tells me blocking a kick. And yes, blocking a kick is great, but there's so much more to it than that. What about, let's say, somebody's throwing a straight punch at your solar plexus? The way we train our blocks is here. And yes, we train our blocks to help teach us body mechanics, but that block comes down and around. So if somebody's throwing a block to a strike to your solar plexus, you're parrying it away, okay, and then throwing the punch. Or somebody standing in front of you, they're throwing that roundhouse to the thigh, then of course, boom, you're blocking there. But too many times we throw our blocks out the window. We practice our low block here all day long, but in the second we actually start to utilize it, whether it be sparring or one steps, we throw those rules and criteria out the window. For example, I see this all the time when it comes to low blocks, is here, this big sweeping motion completely clearing the body. And I'm not saying that you won't do that in a fight. Moving faster, you're going to be moving a little bit more clumsy. So if you're doing that here in a fight, it's going to go way out there. It's going to get exaggerated. So really focus on those clean techniques. Like I said, first technique we're going to be doing is a low block. You can practice these stationary, you can practice these moving, and just a linear line. And then as you move up through the, as you feel more comfortable moving, then you can even add directional blocks. For instance, you know, somebody's standing off at my 45 and my 10 o'clock and they're throwing a strike. Boom, I can start moving off my center line. Now, let's go over the technique. Low block, I'm going to practice predominantly out of a front stance. That's just me. That's just me. Low block is a very solid block, which means I'm going to want a solid stance to utilize it with. So, very first movement is, you can, like I said, you can practice that moving or you can get in the front stance. I'm just going to go ahead and get in the front stance now. Make sure your stance is solid and your hands are up. With the low block, you're going to reach to the opposite ear. Reach to the opposite ear. And make sure you're driving off that rear foot and popping those hips into that low block. Your fist ends up just to the inside of your thigh. Notice how I have a slight bend in my elbow. Too many times we lock this out, and that's not really what you want. If this is locked and you get take a blow on the elbow, too easy to hyperextend. Okay, so one more time. Out of a front stance, your hands are up. You're gonna reach to the opposite ear and low block. Reset, reach to the opposite ear, low block. Reset, reach to the opposite ear, low block. Make sure that when you're doing this, you're getting your legs involved, you're getting your hips involved, and you're not just taking your arms through the motion. Switch, hands are up, reaching to the opposite ear, chambering that foot, driving, popping those hips. Reset, reach to the opposite ear, and down. Reset, reach to the opposite ear, and down. Now, what exactly are we blocking with here? It depends on what you're wanting to get out of this block. For instance, let's say I wanted to utilize this more as a strike. I'm stepping into somebody, they're in a nice solid fighter stance, and I want to step in and strike with this. Or if I think they're about to chamber their leg to throw a kick. When I step in, boom, I'm going to be striking with the meat of my hand. You could be aiming to the inner thigh, you could be aiming to the groin, kidneys, whatever. Blocking. What are you blocking with? Look at the direction that your bones are facing when you block. We don't block here with the back of our hand, we block down. Almost, if you open your hand, almost in a knife hand strike. Because what you're doing is you're actually stacking your forearm bones. If I were to block here, out, or parry here, out, my bones are staggered, which means they're going to be significantly easier to break. If they break one, chances are they'll both break. Versus if I just block here, if something does break, chances are it'll just be one versus two, which will still leave me with a little bit of use of this arm. So you want to make sure that your palm is down, facing you, and you're blocking with here to here. You want to block with the meat, the hard part of the bone. Now, what are you blocking? I hear knee all the time. But look at where you have to be able to block a strike to your knee. You have to be in a ridiculously huge stance and block all the way out here. Not going to happen. I'm not going to block that way. I don't train that way. Where you're blocking is mid to upper thigh to the riblets. Yes, I said to the ribs. Yes, I said to the ribs. If somebody is coming around, say, with a roundhouse, boom, I can put my whole body into it, my whole forearm to it, to distribute that force across a larger area versus getting kicked in the ribs. I don't want to block a roundhouse with an in-out because, frankly, if they know how to throw a roundhouse, that's not conducive. Roundhouse, after all, comes around. And they're designed to go around these types of blocks. So you're blocking mid-thigh to the riblets. Mid-thigh to the riblets. And don't forget when you... I have an individual in front of me throwing a technique. I'm stepping in, blocking that roundhouse kick, controlling, coming up, hooking the leg, stepping in, striking elbow, whatever I need to do. So add blocks into your striking combos. Add blocks into your striking combos. Now we can do low block just a few times moving forward and backwards. So, stepping forward with your left foot, you're going to chamber as you're stepping and low block. Stepping forward, chamber as you're stepping, low block. Stepping forward, chamber as you're stepping, low block. Stepping backwards. As you're stepping, I'm going to chamber, low block. Stepping backwards as I chamber, low block. Now, what you do with the other offhand, frankly, is up to you. Frankly, it's up to you. I am not going to utilize, I'm going to utilize both hands in a fight. I'm not just going to leave my other hand dangling here like a dead fish or there. I will be using both hands in that fight. So you notice my other hand has a tendency of coming up. Modified X block, you might say. Because in a fight, I'm moving, he's moving, we're always moving. So I'm not just going to come up here and leave everything exposed, getting ready for that block. But if you're going to train that way, it has to be consistent. You have to move that way every single time. Consistency is the key to training, so that you can replicate these even when you don't have time to think about the movements themselves. Okay, so let's move on into high block, sandanmak, high block. Now, just like the low block, we do come from a pre-designated position, but once again, I'm not going to do that in a real fight. This is just to teach you body mechanics. But like I do with the low block, I am going to do a high block predominantly out of a front stance. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot do a high block out of a back stance. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying predominantly 9 times out of 10, I will be doing my high block out of a front stance. So let's walk through this movement, shall we? So you're stepping into your stance. I'm reaching across the body, reaching, pulling the sword, and coming up. Now, body positioning here is key. Forearm positioning here is key. I don't want a flat forearm when I block. You know, if you can tell, top of my head's all exposed. You're coming down with a bat or something along those lines, I'm going to get hit. I don't want a force on force block. So let me backtrack. What do I mean by that? I do not want to stop their movement. I don't want that punch coming in and I stop that movement dead in its tracks. I want it to keep going. I just want it to go in a different direction. So if you notice, with that slight bend in my low block, what's going to happen when I block? It's going to deflect it up the arm or down the arm because I do have that slight bend. I'm distributing the force over a larger area. Same thing with the high block. With me having that angle and it coming down, not only is my forearm high enough to actually do the block, but it's going to hit and I'm going to distribute that force over the entirety of my forearm, not just stopping the movement in one area. Okay, so I'm distributing that force so I'm less likely to take damage myself. So once again, hands up, reaching for the sword, coming up. Make sure that your hand is out. Too many times I see this. Once again, think about the direction of the attack. It's coming down. If my palm is down, think about where those bones are. I'm taking that force across both bones. Whereas here, I'm taking that force across one bone, which is going to make them stronger. Okay? So, high block. Reach for the sword. That sword. Middle of the forearm, middle of the head. You got a nice bend in that forearm, and your palm is facing outwards. You want your fist facing outwards, not flat, not in, not bent. I see that a lot also. A lot of people have the tendency of bending their wrists. You want everything nice and straight, nice and locked into place, keeping that nice area of deflection in there. Okay, now we can practice this moving. So, as I'm stepping forward, high block. Stepping forward, high block, stepping forward, high block, stepping forward, high block. Stepping backwards, high block, high block, high block. Okay, and everything that we do is explosive. This is hard to pick up on camera. Maybe I can replicate it slow. As I'm coming down, and then I pop that fist over. Same thing with the low block. You're coming down, snap. You want that explosion right at the end. Same with the high block. You're coming up right on the moment of impact. So if you're slowly rotating, you're missing one whole link of that chain. And notice my offhand position, my other hand's positioning. I come across the body. Once again, I'm keeping myself protected as I move. Now, a lot of us, when we train our forms, we have the tendency of trying to think, hey, this is going to be hard for me to do because I don't do it this way. But a lot of us have the tendency of leaving that other arm there. Very unnatural. For every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you leave that hand there, the other hand I reach, it helps build onto that speed. It helps build onto that speed. So, but once again, every time. My hand is never covering my blocking hand, ever. Even in a low block. If I'm stepping forward with my right foot and I'm blocking with my low block, notice how my blocking hand is in the front. Notice how my blocking hand is in the front. Notice how my blocking hand is never covered. It's never covered. So, if you're going to do it that way, make sure you train that way. Now, some of my personal favorite blocks. I love my out in and out blocks. Those are my favorite blocks. Probably the one that I use the most will be the out in. Will be the out in block. And we have covered this in previous videos, but we will cover it again because it is that important. So, hand is coming up to the ear. Notice my palm is facing out. Nice tight fist. Now, as you're coming up to the ranks, a lot of people have the tendency of making these big, grandiose movements. And I'm not saying you can't practice that way. But as you get more familiar with the body mechanics of the movement, your movement needs to get tighter. And not necessarily these big, grandiose movements. Okay? So, starting with your right foot forward, you're going to bring your hand up and out. Up and out. Up and out. And make sure that you're moving your feet. After all, the power begins at the ground. Everything we do, the power begins at the ground. And too many times we practice these techniques flat-footed. And yes, we're getting hip movement, but we're getting no drive off, once again, the most powerful muscle in the body, the calf. So you have to be moving your feet. Okay, get your feet involved. So out, in. Out, in. And once again, notice the explosion, that snap right at the end of the technique. Okay? Switch. Here. Out, in, out. positioning. I think I completely glossed over that. When you throw these blocks, notice how I'm protecting my center line. Eyes looking over the top of the fist. I will block that way 99.999% of the time, even in a real fight. After all, I train for real world application. Not sparring, not ring fighting, real world application. So by me looking over the top of my fist, what's that mean? I'm protecting my center line. Solar plexus, riblets, liver, kidney, heart, all that is protected. So that if I do take a punch, it's going to be deflected off either way and miss my head. As long as that hand is there, I'm not getting hit in the face. I'm not getting hit in the solar plexus. So, never here. Never here. Always end up out in, looking over the top of the fist. Okay, now let's practice that moving. Now let's practice that moving. Stepping forward, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. Stepping backwards, out, in, out, in, out, in. Looking over the top of the fist. You want about 120-degree bend in the arm. Too many times I see this, once again, straight up and down. Think about that deflection again. If that fist is straight up and down, any force it takes, 100% of it is being transferred to that one area. So if they are, say, punching to the face, and I'm straight up and down, there's no way I'm going to be able to keep myself from knocking myself out. Whereas if I'm here, I do have that bend in the arm. I'm deflecting that force down my forearm versus taking the full blunt of it there. So make sure that you have a nice bend in that elbow. Okay, in out block next. So, once again, reaching for that sword, getting the hips involved, moving your feet, using your feet. You're going to reach for that sword, looking over the top of the fist. Reach for that sword, looking for the top of the fist. Notice once again, I'm not leaving my hand there to just do nothing. I'm always reaching. I'm always reaching. Getting the whole body involved in this. Okay, in a fight, everybody of course is different. I predominantly block with my rear hand in a fight, leaving my lead hand to do the striking. So why is that important in this scenario? Because if this hand is up, chances are that's the hand I just blocked with, which means I can control my opponent and come back with the strike. Switch, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Okay, now let's practice this moving. Let's practice this moving. So step forward with the right foot. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Stepping backwards. In, out, in, out, in, out. I believe I said last video that tape needs to go. So those are our basic blocks that we have. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot more of them, but most of them are built around those techniques. Real quick, I know we're almost out of time, so if you have a question of the night, please leave it. Please leave me a question. Really make it a hard one, because that'd be amazing. But let's go over some of the ulterior applications for these blocks. We talked about low block earlier. Low block is probably one of the best blocks to control the leg. Somebody is stepping in front of you, say throwing a roundhouse to the ribs. That takedown is literally just as simple as blocking, controlling, stepping in, sweeping the leg. It's one of our most basic takedowns, basic techniques, but it has oh so many applications. Go online, go on YouTube, and watch some of these recorded street fights. Every monkey tries to throw a kick in a fight. Most of them you can see coming a mile away. You could end. So one of the most basic defenses that we have could end the fight before they have another chance to do anything about it. Okay. You know. Of course, RR blocks can work against weapons, but it could be something as simple as a forearm strike to the head. Nice forearm, the nose, what I just do, I just opened up the chin, made it available for a million other techniques. As you come up to the range, take Kicho-Yon Ibu, second basic form. High block, high block, high block. In my mind, what am I doing there? High block, controlling the hand. High block, as I still have control of the hand. Another high block takes me right into a figure four. Okay, get to that question. That's a really good question. Really good question. That one I am actually probably going to have to look up. I'll cover that one in a second. One of my favorite forms, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, Basai. Basai is one of my favorite forms. And one of our blocks in there is out of a low front stance here. Now, is that, I was taught that's an in-out block. They're just striking lower. Nay, nay, I say. My application for that is very simple. It is a leg sweep. I'm coming up behind the knee. It's one of my favorite takedowns that we simple or as complicated as you want them, along with everything else. Question tonight was, what is the oldest documented form? In my opinion, it's Basai. Basai, we don't know who created it. We don't know where it came from. I mean, it's literally found on cave walls. That's why Basai is one of those forms that you are not allowed to modify. One of my biggest pet peeves is going to a tournament and seeing somebody do Basai with like a flip or a cartwheel added into it. Basai is ancient. That's why it's in many styles of Kung Fu. That's why it's in many styles of karate, most Korean styles. Taekwondo, Tang Soo, the striking styles. Basai is one of the oldest forms on the planet. Nobody knows how old it is. That being said, Nahachi, the horse form, could be argued as it's the oldest form, because once again, it's one of those things, nobody knows how it got started, nobody knows where it came from. So that is an extremely hard question to answer. But with that being said, since most of our styles can trace their roots in some way, form, or fashion back to White Crane Kung Fu, I will always lead towards Basai as being the oldest form. Reason being, White Crane Kung Fu, most styles of it anyway, has Basai. Has Basai in it. Now, forms, I'm not going to say are a modern day incarnation, but like our one steps in Krav Maga. That's the way a lot of people agree original martial arts was created, by a series of one steps, and then over time the movements were added. But with White Crane Kung Fu being one of the original styles that we can trace our lineage to, I will always say Basai. And please, anybody watching this in the future, if you can correct me, please correct me. Please correct me. I would love to know. Other than that, guys, have a great night. And next day a week, class is back. So chances are, I'm not going to say these are the last online classes this week, But after this week, there will only be one online class a week. Chances are it'll be either on Wednesday or Friday. I have not decided yet. I have to look at my upcoming schedule. But after this week, there will only be one online class a week. So I look forward to seeing everybody next week. If you are leery about coming to a group class, please let me know. We can always schedule a. But other than that, y'all have a great night, and I'll see y'all Tuesday. Jumbi, cheer up. Kim Wright. Y'all dismissed. Have a good evening.